In the heart of a bustling African city lived a young billionaire named Ethan Mensah. He was known for his wealth, his power, and his success. His mansion stood tall on the hills, his luxury cars gleamed in the sun, and his company, Mensah Holdings, ruled the business world. But behind the fame and fortune, Ethan's heart was empty. He had everything except peace. Far away from Ethan's glittering world, in a small crowded market, lived a humble yet brave young woman named Amma. Every morning, she sold handmade crafts to feed her sick younger brother. Life wasn't easy, but Amma carried herself with grace. She was honest, kind, and full of hope. She often said, "Truth is a treasure that never loses its shine." Everyone in her community respected her not for her money, but for her pure heart. One hot afternoon, the market was busy when a small child suddenly ran across the road. A black luxury car came. Speeding down, it was Ethan's car. People screamed, but before anyone could react, Amma rushed forward and pulled the child to safety. The car screeched to a stop, and Ethan stepped out, angry and proud. "Do you people have no sense?" he shouted. "Do you know how expensive this car is?" Amma looked him straight in the eye and said calmly, "Money can buy cars, sir, but not manners." Ethan froze. No one had ever dared to talk to him like that. Without another word, he got back in his car, but Amma's words followed him like an echo he couldn't silence. The next day, Ethan couldn't resist his curiosity. He asked around and discovered that Amma worked for a small local NGO that helped orphans. Out of pride, he decided to teach her a lesson. He visited the NGO with a fake smile and a large check. "I heard you're struggling," he said smoothly. "Here's a donation." Amma smiled politely and replied, "Thank you, sir. But we only accept donations with proper receipts. We help people with dignity, not for publicity." For the first time in his life, Ethan felt speechless. Her honesty wasn't pride, it was power. That night, Ethan sat in his quiet mansion, thinking about her words. "We help people with dignity, not for publicity." They echoed in his mind again and again. The next morning, he quietly sent a large anonymous donation to the NGO this time, without expecting anything in return. When Amma discovered that someone had saved their NGO, her eyes filled with tears. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "God always sends help to those with clean hearts." From his car, parked at a distance, Ethan watched her smile. For the first time, his heart felt light, calm, alive. That day, the man who owned everything found something he could never buy: peace. Weeks passed after that mysterious donation, and Amma continued her work at the NGO with more hope than ever. She never discovered who had helped them, but deep inside, she believed that somewhere, goodness still lived in the hearts of people. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself driving past the market every day. He told himself it was just coincidence, but his eyes always searched for Amma, the girl who spoke truth without fear. One morning, he saw her teaching children to read under a big mango tree. Their laughter filled the air, and Amma's face glowed with happiness. Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace mixed with admiration. He parked his car and walked toward her. Amma looked up, surprised. "You again?" Ethan smiled awkwardly. "Maybe I came to learn something this time." From that day, Ethan began visiting often. Sometimes bringing books for the children, other times just sitting quietly, watching Amma work. He helped fix the old benches, painted the classroom walls, and even learned how to mend fishing nets from the local men. Slowly, the people began to see him not as a proud rich man, but as someone willing to learn. One evening, as the sun melted into gold over the sea, Ethan stood beside Amma. The gentle sound of waves filled the silence. "You deserve more than this life," he said softly. Amma turned to him, smiling. I already have everything I need: peace, work, and people I love. Ethan looked at her, realizing she had something. Money could never buy contentment. He was falling in love, deeply and silently. But not everyone saw it that way. Rumors began to spread: the billionaire and the poor girl, people whispered. Some mocked Amma, saying she was only after his wealth. Others warned her to stay away. Even the children at the NGO noticed the tension. Amma's father, old Kofi, a retired fisherman, called her one night. "My daughter," he said gently, "men like him don't marry girls like us. Don't let your heart break for a dream." Amma looked into his tired eyes and replied, "If love is true, father, it doesn't need permission." But trouble was already on its way. One afternoon, as Ethan was helping to carry supplies to the school, a black SUV arrived suddenly. Out stepped Madame Grace Mensah, elegant, proud, and cold as marble. Her eyes scanned the place and froze when she saw her son laughing beside Amma. That evening, in the mansion's grand hall, she confronted him. "A fisherman's daughter?" she shouted. "Do you realize what people will say? You'll ruin our family's name." Ethan tried to stay calm. "Mother, she's kind, humble, and—" "Enough," she snapped. "You're engaged to Olivia, the mayor's daughter. And this madness or lose everything." Ethan's father sat silently at the table, his expression heavy and distant. That silence was worse than anger. It was judgment. For the first time, Ethan felt the true weight of choice pressing on his shoulders: love or legacy. Days turned into weeks. Ethan didn't visit the village again. Amma waited by the shore every evening, watching the horizon where his car used to appear. Her heart ached, but she refused to hate him. "If he truly loves me," she whispered, "he will return." But life had another storm waiting. One dark night, fierce winds tore through the coast. Boats were tossed into the sea, houses shaken, and cries filled the air. Among the missing was Amma's father, old Kofi. Amma ran barefoot through the storm, screaming his name, searching every shore, but he never came back. When Ethan heard the news, guilt tore through him. He drove all night until he reached the village. He found Amma sitting on the sand, drenched in rain, holding her father's old fishing hat. "You left," she whispered, tears mixing with the seawater. "You promised you wouldn't." Ethan knelt before her. "I was weak, Amma. I thought I could protect you, but staying away, but I only hurt you more." Amma looked at him with empty eyes and said, "Go back to your world, Ethan. Mine has already sunk." Ethan stayed there in silence as lightning flashed over the waves. He finally understood love wasn't about wealth or comfort. It was about standing by someone, even when everything falls apart. He didn't leave the village. Even when Amma ignored him, he helped rebuild the houses, carried wood, and comforted families. The people saw his heart changing his hands once used for signing. Deals were now building hope. Slowly, Amma began to see him differently. Again, she saw the same proud man now working with fishermen, sharing food with orphans, laughing with children. But Madame Grace wasn't done yet. She returned with guards, furious, demanding Ethan come home. When she saw her son, covered in sand and sweat, gasped, "You're living like a commoner for this girl?" Ethan looked at her calmly and said, "For this woman who taught me what life really means." Madame Grace stood frozen. For the first time, her son's strength frightened her more than his disobedience. She left in silence. That night, Amma stood by the sea again, the same place she once wept. But this time, Ethan stood beside her, not as a rich man, not as a savior, but as a partner who had finally learned what love costs. Months passed. The sea had calmed, and so had the hearts of the people in it. The village. Ethan never returned to his mansion or the city lights. He stayed quietly, building a new life among those who once saw him as an outsider. He taught children to read under a tall palm tree, using seashells as letters. He helped the fishermen repair their nets and started a small program to buy better boats for them. The villagers began to say, he may be rich, but now his heart belongs to the sea. Amma watched from afar. Though her heart still carried scars, she couldn't deny what she saw. Ethan had truly changed. The man who once lived for luxury now lived for kindness. Her best friend Ngozi often teased her, "The prince is still here, Amma. Maybe the sea returned something after all." Amma smiled softly and replied, "Maybe. Or maybe he's just lost again." But deep down, she knew Ethan's love was real. It had survived rejection, pride, and even the storm. One quiet morning, the sound of engines filled the village again. A convoy of black cars arrived, but this time there was no shouting, no anger. Madame Grace Mensah stepped out, slowly, without guards, without makeup, without pride. The villagers watched curiously as she walked toward the beach where Ethan was helping fishermen repair their nets. She stood silently for a long moment, watching her son laugh with the men, his hands rough, his clothes simple. Then her eyes turned to Amma, who stood nearby with calm dignity. "I came to take my son home," Madame Grace said quietly, "but now I see he is already home." She looked at Amma, her voice trembling. "You've given him what money could not, peace." Amma's eyes filled with tears. "All I gave him was truth," she whispered. For the first time, Madame Grace smiled a real human smile and took Amma's hands. "Then may that truth guide us all," she said. That evening, the entire village gathered by the sea. Drums echoed through the air, and laughter filled the night. Lanterns floated over the water like stars. Elders blessed Ethan and Amma's union, saying, "May this love remind us that hearts are equal before God." Amma wore a simple white dress made by the women of the village, while Ethan wore a plain cotton shirt. They exchanged shells instead of rings, a symbol of the sea that had brought them together. As the waves danced behind them, they promised to walk through life side by side, rich or poor, calm or storm. Madame Grace, standing in the crowd, wiped her tears. Ethan walked to her and placed Amma's hand in hers. "Mother," he said softly, "this is the woman who taught me what love means." She nodded and whispered, "And this is the man who taught me what humility feels like." Years passed. Ethan and Amma built a small school and health center in memory of Amma's late father, Old Kofi. They called it the Fisherman's Hope. Every child who learned to read there carried a story of love that conquered pride, wealth, and pain. One evening, their children sat outside as the sunset painted the sea orange and gold. One of them asked curiously, "Mama, how did you and Papa meet?" Amma smiled warmly and said, "Your father came from the city, and I came from the sea. But love built the bridge between us." The wind carried her words softly across them. Waves a reminder that true love doesn't live in wealth or fame, but in two hearts that refuse to give up on each other. THEEND. Moral: love is not found in riches or beauty, but in truth, courage, and forgiveness. If you felt the emotions in this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sankofa Tale, where every story carries a deep lesson of love, pain, and hope. If you enjoyed this, you can watch more amazing stories on my channel.